then to talking about food. And food is directly related to the Green Revolution. All right, when you think of green, what do you think of? Okay, good. Plants, grass. What else? The earth, okay. When we're talking about the Green Revolution, are we talking about these ideas of environmentalism? Is that what the Green Revolution is? Right, yeah, so the Green Revolution is really an agricultural revolution. All right, now humans have been growing crops, cultivating crops for about 10,000 years or so. And this happened, generally speaking, in the 1900s, early 1900s up to World War II. I mean, it's continuing on today. What is significantly different about how we're growing crops now compared to how we did it before? It is. It's a lot more efficient. We can get a lot more grain out of a plot of land than we used to. More food out of less resources. How are we able to do that? Okay, good. So the Green Revolution is tied to the Industrial Revolution. In that we have modern machinery, which would include things like the railroad, okay, for transporting food, trucks, highway, etc. But also farming equipment. We don't really work the fields like humans have had to in the past, previous hundreds of years. It's pretty much all automated now by very large equipment run by, gas or diesel, and it does the planting, it does the weeding, it does the harvesting, everything. So there's what once took, 200 people to run a farm, now takes 5. And those 5 people can run hundreds of acres rather than just small plots of land. Okay, good. All right, what else? We've got machinery. It's doing a lot more, but... Okay, great. Let's start with fertilizers. All right, does anyone know what the nutrients in fertilizers are? There's 2 elements that are most commonly found in fertilizers that have been the limiting factor for most of our crops. What's that?
Phosphate.
Okay, good. So we're looking at phosphorus and nitrogen. Of those 2, which one's been the most important? Okay, nitrogen. Why is nitrogen important? Well, nitrogen is a key component of a macromolecule which is important for all of basically the machinery of a biological organism, which is also an important part of building muscle. So that would be what? You work out the gym, what do you got to eat a lot of? Protein. All right. Proteins are made out of a a carbon here in the middle. All right, and then it has a carboxyl group over here, COOH or minus. It has a hydrogen on the top. It has an R group. This just means it could be a variable group. And then on the other side, it has NH3. All right, so this is the nitrogen part. Plants are generally limited in their ability to make seeds, to grow taller, to make flowers, all of these things which are protein intense because they can't get enough nitrogen. All right, we have learned how to pull nitrogen from previously unusable sources. Traditional fertilizers were what? Manure. Yeah, manure, right? So you have your cows work in the fields, your pigs, in the pen over there. You would collect all this manure, you would spread it all over the farm. Or you would take human manure as well, was also used traditionally. Fertilize the field. That is less and less important now. It's important for soil health, but not important for the nitrogen, because what we've been able to do is something called the Haber process. What the Haber process does is it takes air, okay, the atmospheric air. What is our air made out of? What elements are floating around here? Anybody know? Oxygen. It's about 19 or close to 21%. Yeah, let's see. 21% oxygen. What's the other 79%? Oops. 79% is actually nitrogen. But nitrogen gas is a very stable, so it's two nitrogens bound together, very stable and hard to break. We want nitrogen that looks like this, and this is called ammonia. And so what happened is there's this scientist named Fritz Haber, German guy, and he was able to create a process where by adding water and electricity, you can convert nitrogen gas into ammonia. Ammonia is a usable form of nitrogen that plants can take up. So we have plenty of nitrogen gas. We can use a little bit of energy and create ammonia, and wham, now we have artificial fertilizers. Okay, so let's number these things. 1, Industrial Revolution. 2, fertilizers. I have to keep this on the page, so this is going to get kind of messy. 3, Kate mentioned pesticides. All right, so we've also developed chemicals that will kill the insects and other things that are going to eat the plants. All right, and so that allows more of the growth to go towards the things that we like in these plants and less to be eaten by the other things which we're competing for. Okay, there's also another pretty significant scientific technology which has allowed us to get more out of our plants, and that is gene editing. genetically modified foods. All right, so we've been able to actually take genes and put them in that will make a plant more resistant to pests, or better able to take up nutrients from their environment, or able to resist herbicides that would otherwise kill them, or to make them bigger, grow faster, have different nutrients in them, etc. And that has allowed us to, again, be more efficient than in our foods. Now, organic farming, organic just means they use less pesticides, but it doesn't have to do with gene editing. So if you get something that says certified USDA organic, that means it has a certain percentage of pesticides they're not using, so they're using other more natural pesticides rather than artificial ones, but they're still probably the product of gene editing. Okay, all of these things and a few other things, but these are the main ones, have led us to be able to make a lot of food for a lot of people. In fact, we have plenty of food for the people that are on the earth, more than enough. So why are people starving? Human conflict, right? So wars, suppressive governments, is regionally, right? So there are some areas of the world which are less abundant in their crops, so deserts, Arctic areas, and so we have to, find a way to distribute food to the places that are needed. But this led to, let's go back to our cheeseburger. All right, this is a pretty American food, right? But also something that has kind of probably spread and has more of a global reach. You can get a cheeseburger probably most places in the world, or at least in big cities. Can you trace your food to its source? All right, and by its source, I'm meaning, well, let's start with this cheese. Where did this cheese come from? Came from a cow. Well, at one point, but before that, where did it come from?
Well, that cheese kind of looks like the plastic cheese that came from that.
It does. Let's assume it's real cheese. All right, so it came from a store, probably. Grocery store. Where did the grocery store get it? Yeah, some sort of factory where they produce cheese. Okay, where did the factory get it? They got it from a dairy. Okay, and the dairy, all right, got it from cows. Okay, where did the cows get the energy to make the cheese? Okay, grass. Or corn, yeah. And okay, where did the corn come from? From a farm. Sorry, I'm going to go like this. Okay, and the farm then, right, practiced industrial, probably, farming techniques that we discussed in the previous slide. That's a lot of steps to get here, right? A lot of interconnected things have to happen to get your cheese on your cheeseburger. All right, what about the lettuce?
Not the lettuce.
Okay. Okay, it's a grocery store. Yeah, but it didn't have to be, all I had to do was be cut, right?
Yeah.
So
It's still coming from there though, so you're still paying for.
it had to have some sort of process. It had to be washed or something like that. But let's say it didn't need to be made into cheese, right? So let's just say it came from the farm. Which came from industrial farming. All right, what's the difference between these two?
A lot less steps.
A lot less steps in the lettuce than the cheese. Why? This is a plant-based whole food. All right, we didn't have to do anything. You can just eat lettuce. It's not very nutritious. Doesn't have a lot of energy in it, but there it is. Okay, processed foods generally are going to have a lot more steps. So how can you relate that then to things like this? Pollution, production, transportation, effect on the environment, waste. Yeah.
The less processed foods that we are, the less harmful they're probably.
All right. The less processed, the less resources. Generally speaking, right? Okay, what about for your health? Does processing generally increase the quality of the food or decrease the value? Maybe the shelf life, right? There,
It's better for you.
but there are some efficiencies there.
Yeah.
This lettuce will go bad in a couple weeks, more or less. This cheese will last forever. Right. Because it's mostly plastic.
Cheese is straight.
Yeah, so not processing isn't all bad, right? If we didn't have processed foods in some form, we would lose a lot of efficiencies in our food system. So you could say some processing actually helps us with some resources. But health-wise, generally speaking, whole foods are also healthier for you, all right? So, for example, this bread here. Very likely it's white bread, which means what happened in the processing? Anybody know what white bread is made out of?
Sugar.
Okay, then probably put some sugar in it.
White flour.
White flour. What is white flour?
It's highly processed flour or bleached.
Yeah, okay, so it's bleached, has some chemicals in there. What is brown flour or whole wheat flour? What's the difference between white flour and whole wheat?
It's not processed.
It is. Do you know what the difference in the processing is? The color, yes. So there's something missing in the white that's in the whole wheat.
Oh, like all the nutrients.
They take out the undigestible parts. All right, so the bran, the fiber, you can take that off of the wheat husk, and all that's left is the starch part. So white flour is 100% completely digestible. Lots of calories in there. Wheat flour has undigestible stuff in it, fiber, etc. Which you can't digest, but is still good for you because it fills your stomach so that you don't have as many calories. It also helps your intestines, so you clean out your intestines as you eat the fiber. Most American and upper income diets don't have enough fiber because we eat too many processed foods where they take the fiber out. But why do we eat Why do we eat the white flour bun?
Because it tastes good.
It tastes so much better. All right. White bread versus wheat bread. Wheat bread just doesn't taste as good. It's still good. It's just not as good. Okay. White rice versus brown rice. What tastes better?
Come on.
White rice every time. But brown rice has the fiber. It's a little bit better for you. So generally speaking, what's good for the environment also is good for your health. Okay. One other element to this, and we kind of touched on this last time, and kind of goes back to this. Okay. This is called the food energetic pyramid. At the bottom of all the food that we have plants. Right? And this would be our primary producers. These plants can go through photosynthesis. All right, let's say there's 1,000 kilograms of these plants in an environment. You get about a 90% loss or 10% efficiency in the conversion of plants into the next trophic level. Okay, these aren't drawn to scale. But about 1,000 kilograms of plants can support about 100 kilograms of our herbivores. These are our primary consumers.
What is it on the bottom? Primary
Producers, yeah. Okay, and this holds true with every successive level. All right? So carnivores, about 10 kilograms of carnivores can be supported from 100 kilograms of herbivores. These are our secondary consumers. All right, and if you have things that eat things that eat things that eat plants, you could go on up and go further up. But this is probably good for the purpose of what we're talking about. Okay, so let's say you weigh 50 kilograms. I don't know how, that's probably 120 pounds. Let's say you weigh 75 kilograms. Well, let's actually go back to this in a minute. First question, we'll go back to it. Humans, where do we fit here? Are we carnivores, herbivores, or plants? We're not plants, right? And we technically can be either of these, right? We're omnivores, which means we can eat meat and we can eat, and we can eat plants. We can eat things that eat plants, or we can eat plants. We generally don't eat carnivores, but you can. You can eat snakes and what else? Alligator, bear, dogs. Yeah. We can eat anything. All right. Cats. If you are, okay, so now let's go back to this. Let's say you are a 75 kilogram carnivore. You only eat meat. how much plants will it take to support your diet? It will take 75 times 10 times 10. 7,500 kilograms of plants to support your diet. Is that right? Yeah. Okay, let's say you are a vegan. You're an herbivore. How many kilograms of plants does it require to sustain your diet? Yeah, I think I'm missing a zero on this one. All right, so you do the math. Which one's going to be better for the environment? Well, now you would have to eat a lot of snakes, right, or a lot of bears as a carnivore. Most of us aren't carnivores. We're more. Oh wait, I'm all mixed up. Most of us don't eat carnivores, right? We eat herbivores. So that's why I think it makes the more sense. This is a better comparison. It takes about 10 times more resources to eat on this trophic level than it does on this trophic level. Now, if you only eat meat, it's very likely you aren't going to live very long. Okay, you'll die young of something. So it's very unlikely that you could just eat meat. And if you just eat plants, actually, with no other supplements, you'll be very deficient in things like iron and B vitamins, things like that. What's that? Yeah, you'll die. But you can eat only plant products if you supplement yourself with other things, but that requires a lot of processing. The point is, the less meat in your diet, the less resources you're going to be using. The less processed food is, generally the less resources you can be using. So, my last question. Skip over here. Okay, a few terms. Having to deal with these problems with people getting enough food. So malnutrition is not, let's say, deficient in nutrients. Okay, so if someone's not getting enough iron or enough B vitamins or vitamin C, any sort of vitamin or mineral that's not being met in a person's diet, they would be malnourished or malnutrition, be suffering from malnutrition. Undernourishment means deficient in calories, in the actual amount of energy. They're not getting enough food. Right? So a person can have plenty of food but still be deficient in nutrients, right? So sometimes this will cause anemia. Like if you don't get enough iron in your diet, you can be anemic where you can't produce enough red blood cells. That has nothing to do with how much energy, how much food they're eating. It's just the nutrients in there. On the other side, you have overnourishment, right? This is, what's the opposite of deficient? Excess? Too many calories. All right, now what we're looking at in the world economies, those that are high in conflict or really low in resources may suffer from malnutrition and undernourishment, right? Areas that are experiencing famine, drought, these are a problem. All right. In fact, there are, I think in some areas like Yemen, Somalia, I believe, there's currently going through really deep famines and droughts where they're experiencing a lot of these problems. Where in the world do we see overnourishment?
Here.
Okay, yeah, most higher income countries have the problem of what we kind of described before, where as children, when they become adults, they simply just eat the highest energy foods in front of them, and because of their higher income country, they have the ability to do that, and the food system doesn't necessarily help either. All right, undernourishment, you're looking at starvation as a problem. Deficient malnutrition, which often goes hand in hand again with undernourishment. You're looking at physiological effects, like I mentioned, for example, anemia, because you aren't getting enough iron. Overnourishment has a host of other physiological issues. So diabetes, heart disease, sometimes cancer. And when you look at then these higher income countries, these are the issues, these are the things that are killing people. Heart disease is the number one killer in the world, actually. Diabetes and cancer aren't too much further behind them. Now, not that there are some genetic components to these as well, so not everything has to do with overnourishment, but overnourishment is a large contributing factor to those diseases. Okay, some areas we've got too much food, some areas we don't have enough. I guess before, any comments, thoughts, questions? Okay. What does green food look like? Yeah, I mean, plant-based. Okay, can you have green meat? Are all meats the same? Is there differences in them? What's that?
And it could be green, but you
You don't want a green meat. No, yeah. Is chicken the same as beef, as pork, as far as resources? No. Do you know what's the difference?
Well, different levels of resources and energy go into producing each different kind, and each has different chemical structures. I mean, pork is very different from beef, is very different from chicken in terms of what they're made of.
Right. And in actuality, chicken and pork are better for the environment than beef. Beef is the worst for the environment because you have to grow, it takes cows much longer to grow, so more resources are put into making beef than chicken. Chickens, you can raise them fairly quickly, and we very efficiently created a system of growing chickens and pigs as well. The humanity or the ethical considerations are another kind of consideration, but in the areas where you have these high density like chicken or pig farms, they also produce a lot of pollution. And where did you put that? Where do you put, if you have 2,000 pigs in this like small little barn, what do you think it's going to smell like?
You want to hear a gross story?
Sure.
So I heard this story, I read this article that there was this one village that always.
What does green as an environmentally conscious food look like? Discuss that with your neighbor.
She said it has the color green.
The answer is what?
Potatoes.
Potatoes. Whole food, plant-based diets are generally better for the environment than animal-based, processed. Okay? All right, however, I did, one of the articles did discuss some of the economies of scale with processing and growing food. Why do we grow a lot of potatoes in Idaho? Because that's what they're good at. Idaho is. Because the soil and environment creates a really abundant potato crop in Idaho. So, is it better? So this wasn't asked here, but should we buy locally sourced food? Or not? It depends. With potatoes, it actually makes a lot more sense for them to grow them in Idaho and ship them all over the place. Yeah, it's a special. Which would kind of go against some of our processing ideas. You know, we think we want everything to be local and organic and pesticide-free. That helps sometimes, but if we're talking about efficiencies and resources, specializing according to soils and everything else actually makes some sense too. So, yes, this is generally true. Locally sourced can be efficient, but isn't necessarily efficient. And we can't all have locally sourced, organic everything, because that would require way too many resources. So, grab that Twinkie and do your part. This is for economies of scale. All right, so is this common knowledge? Did you know this beforehand? No? Yes, some of it, maybe? Why don't we know this? What's going on? Government is at us. Well, the USDA does put out guidelines on what we should eat. What are those guidelines? Okay, when I was a kid, it was the 4 basic food groups. Meat was one of them. Dairy, I think, was another one. Fruits and vegetables, grain. Right, fruits and vegetables was one of the 4 food groups. And then you were supposed to have meat, dairy, and grains. Does that line up with what? No, it doesn't. Right? Okay, right now I think it's the plate method. It's the my plate thing. What is my plate? Actually, I'm not even sure about it.